There are a lot of farmers all across the world, not just the United States, that have had some extremely creepy and bizarre encounters. Today I'm going to be covering 3 encounters from 3 of my subscribers who are farmers. This first encounter comes straight out of good old Texas. You can't really get any more farmery than when it comes to Texas. I'm being serious, you guys. I visited there when I went over many years ago, and it's my type of place. I don't like the cities, but one thing I realized is when it is dark, those places are eerie. They feel dangerous. They feel like something is really, you don't know. It's the unknown. Today I wanted to cover a case of a guy I'll be calling Andrew. And Andrew's father passed away in 2013, and he inherited 15 acres from his father. Now, while handling the will, the farmland just basically was left desolate. Andrew's father didn't take care of the farm or the property on it. He neglected the house. The farmhouse was big, but it was full of mold. He hadn't maintained it. A lot of the plumbing needed redoing. The electrics had just basically just not worked. And Andrew had to come in, and he had a choice. As do most people who inherit stuff when they sadly have loved ones pass away. His choice was to take over and try to make an income or a living off the land, off the 15 acres, or simply just sell up as it was, because he did not have the money to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to renovate or improve and then sell the farm as a family farmhouse, or some kind of a renovated industrial farm with lots of different outbuildings. He pondered on this for quite some time. Actually, it was a project that he was really stressing over, and at a time when you've just lost your father, you don't really want to have to be going through these tough financial decisions. Obviously the taxes were piling up. He had a tough decision that he had to make very, very quickly, and he decided that he was going to take it on. He was going to try out farming. Now, his father had connections to the other farmers around the area. Some of them made offers to Andrew, but they were extremely low, literally like 50% below market value. He could get way more at an auction, so that's saying something. But they were trying to make money off it, so they were just giving him what they thought they could make lots off of it. So Andrew gets help from these guys, and he comes to agreements that if they help him, tell him which equipment to get, because Andrew had money, but he didn't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to build outbuildings and different things. So this farm had 3 separate buildings on it. One was the farmhouse, and what they did was they turned it into a dairy farm. And when he turned the place into a dairy farm, he got a lot of help from these guys who were basically like going with him, waking up at 4 in the morning and teaching him what to do. Now obviously you needed the cows, you needed to build more stuff, you need equipment. So he ended up spending $50,000, and a lot of the other stuff got given to him by the farmers. He came to a deal. The neighboring farmers would offer him equipment and help and knowledge if he gave them a chunk of the profits that he made from what he was doing. So as he was doing this, he started to realize that it was actually becoming pretty enjoyable. Now, the pasture land that he had, which obviously the cows were grass-fed dairy cows, he was taking care of and reviewing and analyzing. And after a few months or so, they've had their first cycle, their first few births, they're having calves now. They started to get an issue where a lot of them were acting really strange, and the behavior didn't stop. Now, sometimes, cattle can act strange based on things they hear, noises, roads near the farm or the pasture land, the type of food they're being fed, if it's healthy, if they've got infections or illnesses. flies, mosquitoes. There's so many variables when you're a farmer. So Andrew had to sit down with his neighbor and go through all these different things and try and figure out what the hell he was dealing with, you know, because he spent tons of money on this. He had guys with their fingers in the pie. They also wanted to know, why are the cows unhealthy, unhappy, and not productive? So he makes the decision to start reviewing everything, and he gets all the neighbors in, and when they do this, they create a method of counting the cows and calves. And apparently Andrew wasn't doing this, and the farmers next door to him were like, why aren't you paying attention? This is lousy, this is unprofessional, you need to pay attention. But instead of paying attention, he hadn't been. He worked a job as well as doing this, and most of you probably agree that being a dairy farmer is a full-time job in and of itself. But he worked an office job. He drove 45 minutes in the morning after doing the work at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning on the farm. So he worked all day, every day. This guy was a grafter. The guys come round, they sit down, they start implementing methods to review and track and watch and research the cows and the farm and the grass and all this. And eventually they get the most basic problem come back. There's missing cows. The cattle are starting, the herd, or whatever you call it, is starting to reduce in numbers. Now this is extremely uncommon, because unless they're out on wild, you know, the valleys of Wales, free roaming, wild animals, wild cows and bulls, then it's not common at all. It's a situation where a lot of cows are easily kept in one area. They can't run very fast, they don't want to run, they just want to eat all day and be with their friends and family. And obviously Andrew had all these fences all around. He had installed professional wired and electric fences. So what was it? Well, as this went on, they got no other anomalies, no other problems. So the fences are all checked. The herd is all checked for health and fitness, and everything is as would be expected. These guys that are his neighbors are looking, and they're just thinking, what on earth is going on right now? Because they've checked everything they could think of. They're experienced farmers who have years and years of knowledge and experience, and here they are in a situation where they don't know why cows from the herd are disappearing. Do you know how big and heavy some cows are? Yeah, you would have to have like probably, I don't know, like at least 4 grown men try and lift one up, probably 5 or 6, to get it into the back of a van. And is it really worth that? Cow theft. It's not really a thing, is it? Cow theft. So they were thinking, what is this? Something very bizarre is happening. They continue doing watches. One of the farmers named Russell, which was 2 farms down from Andrew, recommended that they should basically try and do lookouts, or, you know, constant hourly checks on the herd, on their behavior, because you can tell how they're behaving, and that will give you more signs on what is happening or how these cows are disappearing. There were 4 entry points to Andrew's farm, and of course 15 acres is big, but he made sure to rotate them on pasture that was near his farmhouse so that he could look out and always see where they were. The last and final thing they did was implement cameras at the edge of his farmhouse directly on the pasture where they were, and by doing this they effectively were able to end up looking and having eyes in every direction possible. And when they had their eyes in every direction possible, they still couldn't find what was doing this. They now had 7 of their members of their herd that had run off. 7 members of their herd. And they had no idea what was causing them to be taken. They checked the cameras. A week goes by, now it's 9. 9 members of their herd have disappeared. Their neighbors are getting really, really angry at this point. They start asking for their equipment back. They think it's a scam. They say that he's selling the cows off for beef, that he's breaking protocol, that he's breaching the contract that they signed up. Andrew wasn't doing any of this. Andrew's a good man. Something was taking his cattle. And the poor guy had done everything possible to try and figure out what it was. And he just couldn't. Until one night, he starts doing lookouts every 20 minutes. He is sick and tired. He stops work. He calls in and he quits. He resigns. If he can't make this farm work, he'll be homeless. He'll have to sell it as it is. He'll be in debt to the neighbours forever. They spent hundreds of thousands on him and that herd and buying things and the cattle themselves. Andrew's $70,000 deep himself. This was his nightmare scenario after just losing his father. What an embarrassment to make of his father's farm. Well, it turns out they weren't escaping. No. When I spoke with Andrew, he explained the one encounter that he had that proved to him that he wasn't a bad farmer, that he wasn't going insane, and that he hadn't missed a protocol of dairy farming and safety of his herd. And it was absolutely unbelievable. He's on his 20-minute intervals of lookouts, and it's 11 p.m. and he noticed that the cows would go missing only around night, because he would do his last checks before he went to bed, and then he would do his checks in the morning at 3:30 or 4 in the morning. And they were going missing around that time. He managed to pinpoint it down to a point where they were being taken at around 3 in the morning. Eventually, he had this sighting where he was about to go to sleep. It was 11 p.m. He went for the one last check of the evening. And as he goes out, he gets his boots on. Now, he lives alone. He gets his boots on and he walks up to the field where they are pasturing or going around. At this point, he's left it a bit late. Usually farmers bring their herd in way earlier than 11 p.m. But this was Andrew's way of trying to entice whatever was taking the cows to come out and do it. It was his tactic. So he tried his hardest and thought maybe they're not being taken from the pasture land, maybe they're being taken from the barn, the locked barn with a massive gate. You'd have to lift this great big heavy animal, heifer, over a massive 5-foot tall metal gate without making noise and clanging the metal. And he goes out, he's got his boots on, he walks all the way up to where the pasture land is that they're on, the rotation they're currently on, and he just looks out. He does a count, and it's the number that it was yesterday, so he's like, today we haven't lost anything, thank God. But as he's looking, there's a corner to his farmland, and this particular field they're on was bordering just down a pair of lanes. Now these lanes were the access points to his farm, and it's where the neighbours came in to visit him through the gate from their farms across the road, the lane. It's not really a road. And he saw movement, not light, movement. Like if you saw a human walking through a forest in the dark or in the dusk, you'd just be able to make them out because it's not pitch black. That's the situation he had. It was a shadow type movement. Now, he said that this wasn't a human, it wasn't stood up, it was crawling. And he would liken it to what people have coined a pale crawler. Now, I don't know too much about these pale crawlers, but they're in some of my other submissions about sightings of pale crawlers all around the US and also the UK. And he said that it was crawling really weirdly, and it crawled over his fence. And for some reason it didn't know he was there, it couldn't sense him, and he was looking at this thinking, absolute thought he was like nuts, losing his mind, because this is something he's never seen his whole life. This thing it was again just complete, no clothes, it had no clothes on, and it was crawling around. It looked like someone who was very underweight, very pale, and no hair, no body hair, no hair on the head, no nothing. And that's it. He couldn't make out any features. It didn't climb or step over the gate like some normal person would. It crawled over the gate like a spider going up a wall, a brick wall at the front of your house or drive. It used its 4 legs to crawl up the gate. And this thing looked big. He said if it stood up, it would look to be the average height of a man, like 5'10" or 5'8". And he's got his big heavy boots on, he turns around and he starts running as fast as his heavy boots will allow him in this muddy, thick grassland. He gets the hell back in that house, grabs his huge shotgun, he pulls it out, and he lets loose. As he releases the barrel, boom, boom, the cattle, you know, they're having heart attacks, you guys, they're going nuts, they're terrified. And he sees this creature jump on the top of one of the cows like a mosquito that's trying to bite your face or your neck or suck the blood from you, or a tick or something, a parasite. Jumped on him like a parasite and was trying to bend it over, like twist it so it would fall over on its side. And if anyone here knows, has cattle or even horses, when these mammals go on their sides, getting them back up is a nightmare, especially cows. Not so much horses, it's a little bit easier. But cows, when they're laying on their side or down, it's almost like sheep and rams. It's a nightmare trying to get them back up. And half the time you have to get them back up. And this thing, this Palecrawler, was trying to latch itself onto the back of this big heifer, and it was trying to rock it to the side. And when he let loose on his weapon, firing shell after shell, reloading, he had fear in his heart. He thought, this thing's going to attack me. It jumped off, but before it jumped off, it looked directly at him and saw the direction he was firing from. It looked at him for a few seconds, that's it, 1 or 2 seconds, and then it looked pissed off, he said. Jumped off, crawled fast, running crawl, all the way back to the fence where it came from, and crawled back over. And when he had this encounter with this, whatever it was, Palecrawler creature, it never came back. The numbers stayed neutral at that point. No more were taken after this happened to him. And we think it's because what he did that night, where he confronted it. And the creature thought, well, I can't keep doing this. I'm going to end up poof, you know, I'm going to end up gone. I'm going to have to deal with humans. And these creatures rely on cover, discretion, hiding. It's their biggest, you know, it's their biggest strength. And he's still in awe today. He cannot believe what he went through or what he experienced. Tulare, California is where our next experience is coming from in the US. And today I'm going to be talking about something that was extremely bizarre, also involving cattle. This wasn't your typical creature sighting or creepy next door neighbor. Instead, this was a situation where somebody found people, like men, on the property. And to understand this, we're going to have to go a long way back in this farmer's history. This farmer, who was okay with me giving his name, Douglas, is in his 40s and had again been handed the farm from his father, as almost all farmers have, to continue the tradition, to continue the family business. And it's not very lucrative depending on where you are, but in Tulare I think it's also quite a common thing for farmers to have different dairy farms and things. And this guy was once again doing the usual farming routines and activities, and he started to realize that the cows weren't going missing. They wouldn't eat, they wouldn't graze on a certain area in the farm. And like I said on the other encounters, where they rotate, and they have a rotation of, you know, that field will be eaten and that one regrows, the other one is used. Well, in this instance, Douglas would put them on a specific bit of grass, which he said was 3 acres. And when they went on this grass, they would refuse to eat. And anyone who knows livestock like that, refusing to eat is extremely bad. It usually means they're either sick or they are very, very scared. So the answer is they had to find out what was going on, because a lot of the livestock were losing weight, and rotation cannot be changed. Rotating the pasture cannot be interrupted. You can't backtrack and go back to the old one that you went on, because it has to regrow over weeks and weeks and months, depending on the sunlight, the rain, and all those things. So he had to leave them there, and he started to realize that if he just left them there, maybe put out some extra, I think they call it silage or hay or something, or other things that they enjoy to eat, some grains and stuff, that if he sprinkled it, maybe they had an issue with some type of fertilizer or chemical that he had sprayed that had blown with the wind over to that field or something, because it wasn't just a dairy farm on Douglas's property, it was also plants they grew for the family. So he was thinking, okay, well, I can just do this. So he goes down to his local store, which is, when I say local, it's a farm store. So this is like a big building where you buy all the feed, pellets, you can buy even ammo there, you can buy all different things, and it's like an outdoor shop but for farmers in Tulare and in California. And he went down there and he spent thousands of dollars, you guys, thousands, on buying this feed. And when he got the feed, it was a massive sack, which he had to have delivered by one of those massive lorries or trucks that has the lifter on it, which lifts the bag and props it down onto, the farm where it needs to be, over the gate and the fence. So not only did he spend thousands on this feed, but he also had to spend hundreds on having it delivered, which I found a bit cheeky, but apparently California is extremely pricey. I thought they would include the price of delivery if he had spent thousands on feed. Now, yeah, I'm telling you it's thousands because he bought tons. This pile that he had was, just imagine the size of your living room and filling it up with feed. That's literally what Douglas did. He spent a lot of money because he knew that there's no amount of money that can buy his herd. If he loses the herd, he loses his whole business and he loses his family, basically, because then they have to get jobs and it becomes a nightmare. He was he had a lot of people relying on him, and when you have a business with a lot of people relying on you, it becomes stressful, it becomes a lot of pressure. So he puts out this feed, and they put the massive sack down at the edge of the land where the cattle were grazing or not grazing, and he goes and he takes his shovel, and him and his son, they go out and they begin sprinkling it all over. They walk all around, they take bits of it, and they walk all around the pasture, which is thick and luscious. Imagine something like this. Obviously these are, I think, some kind of bluebells or flowers, but it was really long and really overgrown. So he was like, why aren't they eating it? He inspected it, he smelt it, he picked it. There was nothing wrong with it. There was no chemical that he could detect, no kind of residue, no insects that perhaps might be harming or stinging the cattle's tongue or something, or wasps or flies or mosquitoes or ticks, nothing like that. He couldn't find any of it. So they put all this feed out, and while they're over this land, they decide to start putting it one side, because this was clever of Douglas and his son. He said to Douglas, his son, he said, do you know what, Dad, let's put it down one side so we experiment. If they eat the side with the silage and the feed, then it means that it is actually something wrong with the grass. If they don't, then we know it's not actually the grass as the reason why they're not eating. It's psychological. And have you ever seen those videos, you guys, where people play jazz music for cattle and herds at the side of the farm? They play trumpet, they play trombone, and the cattle love it. They come over, they run over, and they start just, vibing to it. They're very emotional creatures, and they have a psychological side. If they're stressed out, they have symptoms that they've been stressed. They won't eat, they'll become distressed, they'll make crying sounds. So, Douglas's son was very clever in that respect, coming up with that idea that he could then say, well, hang on, Dad, I can prove if it is something worse or if it's simply the grass. So that's exactly what they did. They drove all the way up and down and just sprinkled it with one of their machines. I don't know, some kind of thing. They shovel it all in a secondary transport unit or bag, and then they put it in this machine which sprinkles it as they drive up and down. And there we go. So he's like, okay, when we get the herd out tomorrow, they should begin eating this. So the next morning comes, they get the herd out, and what happens? The exact same thing. They will not eat it. And Douglas is there thinking, well, I've just spent thousands on a complete wasted task. They won't eat it. So he gets frustrated at this point, and he starts to do what the farmer in the first encounter did in Texas, which was to look out and examine. Sometimes you can't beat just a good old look. If there's a problem, even professionals, you know, people in the profession, doesn't matter what high-tech equipment you've got or how much money you have to invest in looking at stuff or tests, sometimes it just takes someone sitting there, standing there and looking, observing over a long period of time. And when that is done, sometimes you'll notice things and you'll see, hang on, that's what's causing it. And in this case, Douglas' son was extremely helpful to him. He decided that they would start looking at the area, not just the grass. They would look at the trees bordering the farm, bordering the pasture land. They would look at the birds, the behavior of the cows, the weather, so many different things. The insects, they studied the soil. They took soil tests and got a sample taken off to a lab, which cost thousands, like $4,000. Because this was serious now. It was getting bad because a lot of his cattle were losing weight, which means he's losing money. His family farm is losing money. If a cattle lose weight, dairy cows lose weight, become unhealthy, then sometimes they create way worse milk or no milk because they don't have the pregnancies. And it becomes a nightmare. So he started looking, him and his son would again analyze this land. And one particular night, a whole year of this ongoing issue where they just had to keep feeding them the feed in the barn. It's the only way they could get them to stay a healthy weight and stop losing weight. And they look out a year later and they catch something. And it's really weird because they didn't associate it at first. It had been so long they just thought, well, whatever, we just have to skip this pasture and move on, because it had been a whole year. So of course they could easily just rotate by then. Everything's grown back. Well, every part's grown back by a whole year. They look, and one evening they're watching TV as a family and they see lights off in a field. It's their field, and it's the one where the cattle won't eat the grass. And it's a very faint light. It's not an LED light, it's not a white light, it's an orange glow light. It's amber, and it is like an old car headlight. You know those old ones where the lights were orange in the street lights. And as they look out, they see that something with that light is moving. It's a human holding a torch, or something weird is happening, and they want to know what it is. So they both go outside and they have these sight lenses. So like sight lenses are like a advanced version of binoculars basically, and you can get a singular one that you hold up to just one eye, and it uses some kind of technology, and it can go miles, these things, as long as there's no obstructions or trees or things like that. And Douglas got out his sight lens, and I think one of them you even connect to like rifles or something. There's flies everywhere, you guys. And yeah, so this particular lens he was using was zooming in on a man that was holding a torch, one of those old orange torches, and he was looking around just the grass. He was pointing the torch on the ground, and it was like he had lost his keys or something in amongst all the grass. And Douglas was like, what's this guy doing? So he decides that he is going to go out there and yell. Now this guy wasn't near the part where they tried the experiment with the feed. He was up the other end, which was right at the corner of this pasture. And when Douglas went out with his son, now his son's not young, remember, because Douglas is middle-aged. His son's in his 20s. They both went out prepared to face something which was probably going to be pretty serious. And when they got out there, the guy noticed them and immediately started running. The guy heard the sound of the vehicle that they were driving down into the field, and he ran. And Douglas and his son went straight over to where the guy was. And at the verge of the property, on the edge of the pasture land, there is basically just like a bunch of like mini trees. You got some birch trees, you got some different things, some plants, some grass, some overgrown weeds and stuff, and different species of plants. And he had the fence, obviously, and then just nothing, basically nothing to farm, just a bit of desolate land. And Douglas explained that on this desolate land there was a kind of mound that you know those roads, the country roads out in like Oregon and Texas and California, they have either side, it looks like they have like trenches, you know, where the water drains into them. And in the winter, if it's very heavy rain, lots of rainfall, you'll just see streams either side of this road, this dirt road you're driving on. And it's for, you know, correct like drainage, so that the roads don't get flooded too much. As in the UK here, we don't have that, and the country lanes don't have drains, most of them. They become totally flooded, as both the fields are above the road, so the farmland runs onto the road, and it creates like where your car's basically just underwater, and you end up ruining the whole engine. So if you drive through it, that is, if you're silly enough to. He goes up to this mound right at the edge, and he's driven past this lane many times. He drives up and down it lots, and he goes there, and just before the verge, just before the mound where his land meets the lane, before there, imagine just a really, really small opening into the mound, like a hobbit hole or a badger hole. And he looked down, and this is where the guy was shining his light. So Douglas thought, what the hell is that? What's going on? And he went down, and he could see that there was an opening, like someone had dug a ditch or dug some kind of a hole. So when he went down into this ditch, he could see that it was a passageway that led down into something like some sort of a tunnel. And Douglas instantly knew, well, that's not mine. I haven't done that. It's man-made. He could instantly tell those three things. So he's a bit wary what's going on down there. So he shines his flashlight and he goes right down, and the mound has a tunnel dug into it, so you can walk under the pasture land. And as you get right to the end of looking, around 10 meters, 20 meters, there is a door. A wooden door. It's pretty botched together, it's old, and you know, it looks wonky, but there's a makeshift door down there made of wood. So he's like, yeah, okay. It's the middle of the night, it's pitch black, and they found a bunker, an underground bunker underneath the pasture land of their farm. They don't go in it, they don't know who's there, what's going on. So they come out, they go back to where they came from, and they're like, that guy was trying to find it, someone's under there. Get the hell back, call the cops, go in with the cops when we're armed, and have more men with us, you know. So they wait for the cops to turn up, and the dispatch, Douglas said, was thinking, what the hell is this? A farmer's saying he's discovered an underground bunker on his land, and he thinks there's people living in it, and that's why his cattle won't eat the grass. And they send people, the cops turn up, there's about 5 cops, because they took it seriously. And when they go all the way back down to the mound at the edge of this pasture land, they find the tunnel again. They all go in. 2 cops go in first, pointed with their flashlights mounted on the weapon, and they go up to the door and they bang it. They say the name of the town, the township that they are cops at, and they say open up after shouting their identification. And no one opens up. No one makes a sound. So they try the handle. It's not even locked. It's a makeshift, really bad kind of PVC plastic handle on a wooden frame. And they open it. Creaks. Makes an old creaking sound on its hinges, and it opens up to a mini, like, hobbit house. Like, imagine a room that is really big, but it's only 4 foot high. so everyone would just have to duck or crouch down. In this room there were tables, chairs, benches, and here's the disgusting and unusual part. There were different things like candles, there were cauldrons, goblets, and different types of items and ritual material, or like ritual gold stuff and weird stuff that people would put out when saying prayers or in some kind of a secret group or cult. And that's what they discovered. And Douglas said when the cops saw this, they didn't know what to make of it. They'd never seen anything like this before. They thought that it was a trap where Douglas and his son were trying to get the cops in there to, you know, to do God knows what. But it turns out that wasn't the case. That actually Douglas had no idea what this was. And this hobbit house went for a long, long way. It went for 100 meters. Okay, and he figured that whatever was going on, these people under here were up to no good. They were doing some kind of ritual, some kind of prayer, something, and the cattle, for some reason, the herd could feel it. They were sensitive to whatever was going on. Whether they were making sounds or music or scaring the cattle, maybe there was vibrations, who knows. That could be a more plausible reason for the cattle not eating grass. But remember, we're talking about cattle not eating pasture. Yeah? When that happens, it has to be severe. It has to be something really, really, really bad for them to not do that. And they confiscated all this stuff. They blocked it off. And over the next few weeks, they filled the whole bunker with earth. They ripped down the structure. They took all the belongings and table and furniture, the benches, the cauldrons, the goblets, the what do they call them? Those things with the candles on. There were so many weird things. And it was just really, really creepy. Because Douglas was not expecting to find something like this on his farm. Our next creepy farming encounter was from a farmer out in Oregon who experienced what we're going to call the possessed sheep. Now this sounds laughable when you listen to this title, but what happened was extremely bizarre, and there are actually cases of this happening all around the world, of sheep acting and behaving extremely weird and strange. Now this particular farmer was just dealing in lamb. And a lot of people love lamb. It's an extremely tender type of meat. But while he was doing this farming, he noticed that there was one particular baby lamb that had just been born. And he noticed it as soon as the lamb was born, that it was acting very, very strange. It was behaving different to all the others. It was antisocial, which is really not normal, because in nature, if an animal is antisocial, they tend to not really survive. If they don't want to be with their parents, if they don't want to be, with the family and their group, they go off alone and they end up not surviving. So something wasn't right. They did all the tests and they got the vets in. And there's some top vets up in Oregon for farming vets and livestock. And they got the best ones in and they didn't know. They couldn't understand what was going on with this possessed sheep, we'll call it. So they tried their best to keep an eye on the sheep, and as the years went by, it didn't grow out of these behaviors. It got worse. And this farmer was telling me that the behavior was so weird and creepy because this sheep would stare at humans. And he told me that it was almost like this sheep knew or remembered like it had a human life. Like the soul used to be a human. And the reincarnation, which people talk about, the theory, could have happened because it was behaving so strange. Obviously there are conditions that these sheep can have. There's diseases, there's mental diseases, nutritional deficiencies, mental damage or something, but these are caused by things which the vet would have picked up on. Even if you say, oh, it's psychological, the psychological is caused by trauma, is caused by violence is caused by something to the animal or its family. It witnesses something horrific. And even then, when animals witness these things, they tend to just take it on the chin, as they say, and go on with life. They tend to just get on with it because that's their survival mechanism. They don't start acting like they're shell-shocked, like, veterans who get... Some of the veterans who have been on the battleground, they get shell-shocked. They get extremely scared, paranoid, jittery, nervous. And this possessed lamb was just... it was like almost recognition. The farmer told me that this baby lamb began by just never wanting to be with the mother, never wanting to be with the family or the herd or the friends, and deciding that it wanted to be alone. Always off in the corners, antisocial. It was kind of like the lamb had some form of autism or something, and it was extremely confusing but also interesting for my subscriber because he couldn't understand what was causing this, and the vet couldn't either. And on one particular encounter, he went out to go out with them and take a look at the livestock, and when he was out there, he said that this was years on now, since the birth of this lamb, that it was just staring at him. It was just staring at him blindly. Do you know when people have no vision because they're blind or they're very, very awful vision? Like, they look at things but they're not looking, they can't see. So it's like they're just looking at things but they can't see it. They're looking with their soul. Blind people are very, very, very hyper audible. They're very good at listening. They can see things with literally hearing where the noises are from. It's really, really impressive skill. And he said it was looking at him like this. It was looking at him as if it was remembering something or recognizing or daydreaming, having a thought or visualizing something. And anyway, eventually this particular sheep lived its life. It didn't end up getting used as lamb, and it was a female, and they ended up using it to create babies. And that probably wasn't the best of ideas. And I asked him, well, did the baby lambs that she had end up having the same problem? And he went, no, surprisingly not. They kept an eye on them and thought maybe it's genetic, and it ended up, not happening. It didn't pass anything down to them. But it was a very silly thing because I didn't agree with what he did there, you guys. He had, he made her have lambs, babies, when she didn't want to be with any of her own. So effectively she left her own and wouldn't raise them. Now, of course, that's okay on a farm environment where the farm hands and the employees and the family can do the raising for her, but in nature the babies would have been left and wouldn't have survived. So, and anyway, we've got enough issues nowadays with even humans having babies and not wanting them, not raising them correctly or leaving them to go off and do whatever, getting involved in bad things and influencing others in bad ways. So it was a bit bizarre, but this particular one I could find was also on a farming encounter. I don't have many of these actually, but I wanted to make this particular video only farmer encounters, and so I included this one just because it fits the topic of today's video. I will be covering many more in the upcoming videos on this channel every single day. I'll be reopening for submissions next week. Yep, next week you guys can send me in your cases and your experiences. You will have a choice to either not appear on the channel and have me just talk about your case to my viewers like this, or you can appear on the channel and we can do a video call, I think, on some kind of chat where you film the screen and I interview you. That won't be live, so it's okay. You can make mistakes and things and we can edit it up, but that will be an uploaded video of me interviewing you and you appearing on the channel, and I would love that. I want all people, I don't care what background, where you worked, what you're interested in. I'm interested in everyone's sightings with the paranormal, extraterrestrial, mystical experiences of crime, creepy people in public and forests, hiking, camping, you know, even the ones like the one I did about the New York garbage man, when he reached out to me, you know, things like that's not even considered like a creepy encounter or horror. It's theories, it's, you know, asking questions, paying attention to what's changing around us. And I actually have one coming up. There's an ex-Wyoming cop, and he won't be appearing on the video, but he had a really interesting thing to tell me, which I'll be covering. So click that subscribe button and that notification bell next to the subscribe button if you want to see that. Leave a like on the video to support my work and my channel. Thank you so much, you guys. I hope you are all well. I hope you're all taking care of yourselves and you're healthy. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you.